morning again. Day 2 of the conference. Are we awake? Did we win? Who won bingo? I want to know who got that blanket. Was it you? Congrats. So welcome, welcome. We're so glad that you're here, and we're excited to continue working together. Today promises to be an exciting and engaging session with amazing speakers and meaningful opportunities to connect with change makers. Before we get started, we're very excited to welcome Sage Andrew Romero, who will be doing a hoop dance for us. Give him a round of applause, please.
Manahu Iaho, Inaniane Sage Andrew Romero. Hello, greetings, good morning. I'm Sage Andrew Romero. My name is traditionally Alapian Chuntai. I am of the Tova Wahamatanuma and the Tuatai people, that is the Big Pine Paiute and the Taos Pueblo people. And I am a founder director of a nonprofit, Akamaya Culture Group, and we emphasize cultural teaching space, safe space to learn, safe place to develop. And we have a dance studio just north of here in Big Pine that is focused on Native dance. And so I also present and share culture at events such as this and with communities. So I'm going to start us off in a good way. I was asked to come here and share the dance of as you know, as the hoop dance. And us, amongst our Taos Pueblo people, we call it the Tawatona. And there's many stories behind it, there's many meanings, but one of those things is to give people that good medicine that they need so that they can feel good, so that they could heal, go through what they're going through. And I know you all do a lot of good work, so I'm honored to dance amongst you. But before I start, I always like to acknowledge the people of this land that we are upon right now, the Tongva, the Gabriano people, and I want to honor and respect them and first offer up a song that comes from my people to start us off in a good way. And this is just an offering to their people as a guest of on their land. I always bring a song from my people to them, and this comes from my Paiute Numa people. And this is a blessing song, so if you're able to, please rise as you're able, and I'll sing it in the best way I can. Oh. Toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwena, pero that say, yaka, yaka, kwen, yaka, yaka, kwen, toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwena, pero that say, yaka, yaka, kwen, yaka, yaka, kwen, toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwena, pera say, yaka, yaka, kwen, yaka, yaka, kwen, toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwena, toyo, toyo, kwena, pera say, yaka, yaka, kwen, yaka, yaka, kwen. Oh, Mano, thank you. You may be seated. Oh. All right, that song sings about the eagle flying over the mountains and listening to the prayers of the people, as many people have that belief that the eagle carries those for us, and that is amongst ours as well, our people. And so I always like to start off with a song as well from my flute, just as an offering to everybody here now. This is just to start you off and give you some good feeling as we start and get you in the zone, get you ready to take in what you're about to listen to, what you're gonna hear, what you're gonna experience. And even with the hoop dance, being able to take in that moment, take in those dance movements that you'll see in front of you. And so this flute just kind of helps you zone in, and so that's what I'm gonna do for you now. All right, got you all warmed up now. All right, so now I'm gonna dance for you. And he's, all right, now it's that time, here we go. So again, as I said, this is the Tawatona amongst my people. We use the circle, the symbol of many of our people, for medicine, for connection, showing how everything is around, all the things around us are connected. And we use the circle as we dance upon our bodies, and as we dance, we make shapes of things you see in the natural world. So every movement that I make when I'm dancing represents something in life. And everybody won't see the same thing. You may see something different from another person, but that's part of your journey. That's okay. And try to take it in and get that good feeling. And as we say as hoop dancers, it's good to laugh, it's good to clap, it's good to smile as you're watching the dance, because that is the medicine that this carries. And it's a very old dance that comes from my Taos Pueblo people, amongst other people as well. But our Taos Pueblo people are recognized as one of the older carriers of this dance. And so I dance with 5 hoops, and I'm gonna dance to a Taos Pueblo style song, just to bring that traditional aspect to it. But again, as I said, it's a good medicine, it's a good teaching, and a good feeling to have when you're watching this dance. And so feel that as you're going. There's also the teaching that says, if you have somebody in your life that's going through a hard time or going through sickness, think of them as you're watching the dancer with the hoops. You think of them, and that medicine, that good feeling you have, goes towards them. And so think of someone in your life that might need some good healing, some good medicine as you watch this dance, and take that good feeling. So again, this is the Tawatona amongst my people. This is my rendition of the hoop dance. Oh. All right. Thank you, everybody. Again, take that good feeling you got from watching the dance. Help yourself feel good. Help yourself heal. And send it to your loved ones back home, those that you are representing, and send it in a good way. So I'm gonna close out with a song, a round dance song. I don't know, everybody wants to get up and make a little circle. I'll just do a real quick one, but it's up to you. Oh, we already got some getting up, good. I'm almost out of time, so gotta do it, maybe do it around your tables. Hey. Little circles around your table. Hey. All right. Good. Good. Okay. So again, usually around here we go to our left. We do the circle this way. So you want to go to your left. We'll make a nice little circle. Close us off and dance in a circle. I danced with the circles. Now you're dancing in a circle. Finish it up. As they say, bringing it around. All right. I'm gonna sing a romantic song that I composed for a recently engaged couple. So feel that romance, feel that love, hold hands, and let's go around together. Here we go. Yahweh. Oh, everybody, good job. Thank you. As I close out, before you sit down, put your right hand up real quick. Put it up, put the right hand up. Put it over your heart. So, you heard that rhythm of that song, the tempo is the heartbeat. And us being all connected in the circle like Mother Earth shows we're all connected by this heartbeat. So let's take care of each other. Let's love each other. Let's make sure we're all healthy, well, and safe as we go on and we take care of our people in a good way with this one single heartbeat. I'm Sage Romero. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Many blessings. Oh. All right. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Mr. Sage Romero. So you don't get that at every philanthropy conference, just want to make that clear. We're especially pleased to introduce this morning plenary session, Beyond Hesitation, Can Philanthropy Step Up for Tribal Economic Development? This is an important conversation that will explore the critical role of philanthropy that philanthropy can play in supporting tribes, sovereignty, and sustainable futures. We are going to hear from amazing leaders, and the moderator of the panel is my dear friend, Dr. Lee Francis. So please join me in welcoming to the stage, Dr. Francis.
Right. right. Goatse haupa doastre drashkwa hinome Lee Francis, washeshka wakame if medicaname. Good morning, everyone. Some of you know me as Dr. Lee Francis, also my alter ego as Dr. Indigenerd. And I am so excited to be able to share this stage with some amazing guests, but I have a quick moment. I almost forgot something. Hold on. I need to set up our little fireside. So now it is truly a little fireside chat here for everyone as we talk around the campfire. So please, if we could welcome up our wonderful guests, Lauren and Chris and Jerry, come on up on stage and join me. This would be wonderful. And join me around the fire this morning. All right, so I will just start by going down the line and allowing yourselves just to say who you are, what org you're with, and what you do, and then we'll kind of go around and learn a little bit more about you, because one of the things that we're here in this amazing space about having conversations, building relationships with each other, building that trust with each other between philanthropy and funders and economic development. So we want to start with a couple of ways that we can build that, and we can learn a little bit more about you. So take it away.
Aloha kakahiaka, o Lauren Keali'i Aina Grattan Ko'inoa. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Grattan. I'm co-founder and chief community officer of Mission Driven Finance. I am Hawaiian and live in San Diego.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Chris James. I'm president and CEO of the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development. It's so good to be here, Lee.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sherry Rupert. I am Paiute and Washoe from Nevada. And woo! I hear a Washoe
Always
out
good.
there. Oh, Paiute too. And I'm the CEO for the American Indigenous Tourism Association. So glad to be here with you all today.
Amazing. You got a cheering crowd right there. That's awesome.
I paid them to be
You brought
here.
them in, right?
You've got a whole bunch of people.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I'll start off with this, because obviously you can look online and see their incredible bios and the amazing work that all of them have done and been doing. But I'm going to challenge them a little bit and say, so I'm going to take you home to Grandma. How do you tell Grandma what you do? Like, you introduce yourself as you would be like, okay, so Grandma, so what do you do? So how would you tell everybody in this space what you do in terms of your position and the work that you are trying to accomplish? As if you're talking to my grandma.
This is, no joke, my hardest question.
Got her on this one.
But I sometimes talk about, like, we work in investments and we design investment strategies so that capital can get to great organizations, and then they glaze over. Grandma's like, I don't know what you're saying,
Neat.
Sweet child. And they're like, okay, well, we're like a finance wizard. There's all sorts of different kinds of money, and we understand how to put it together so that it actually supports community needs.
My grandma loves wizards, so that's cool. My grandma's a big Indigenous nerd as well, so that's fine. So.
Gosh, that's a tough one. For the past 20 years, I've been honored to support our Native communities in various levels. That includes at federal level, that includes working with the tribes, and now at a national level with the National Center for American Indian Enterprise Development, focusing on bringing capital, bringing opportunities, and bringing contracting into our Native communities and expanding our enterprises and building upon economic development. I don't know if she'd understand that, but that's
My grandma very smart too, so that's okay. She understands capital.
She
knows
would
that.
ask me, like, okay, what do you do? I think would be the second question.
She'd probably
Yeah.
be like, oh, that's great, and then start asking you a whole bunch of questions about spreadsheets and stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
my grandma's very smart. Thank you. Sherry.
I would say, Mu'a, Auntie, Auntie Grace down the road, she's an artist, and she creates beautiful basketry. She's a weaver. She creates beautiful jewelry. Autumn, our friend out at Pyramid Lake, she's a fly fishing guide, a fly fisherwoman. And our friends over in Yurok, they have indigenous guides that take you down the river and talk to you about their culture. Our friends Agua Caliente down in Palm Springs, that beautiful museum that you went to, Mu'a. These are the people that we represent. These are the people that we advocate on behalf of in Washington, D.C. You know that guy you see on TV? I met with him the other day and advocated for our people. Mu'a, we take this information to other countries and we talk about our amazing people here in the United States and in our Alaska Native villages and in our pueblos across this nation. We talk about them so that people will come here and be able to experience their culture and their people and their lands. And that's what we do.
That's something.
Sherry wins on explaining to Grandma.
Sherry's rocking it today.
My
I'm a
grandma would say,
storyteller.
like,
You are a
when are you
storyteller.
taking me on a trip? Let's go. This is amazing.
Come to Nevada, I'd
I'm
be
just
happy to give you a
saying.
tour.
All right, y'all are welcome to dinner. Now you go eat and Grandma take care of you. Don't worry about it. All right, so as we've talked about this idea of hesitation and some of the challenges that are facing us within connecting these dots between philanthropy and economic development, because I think oftentimes we think of them as two separate spaces, right? It's the nonprofit and the for-profit, and those two can't mix. And the nonprofit, we often think of as, oh, well, that's like industry, that's the kind of the big time stuff over there, right? And the nonprofit's like, oh, that's the giving and the taking care and the other things, right? But there is an absolute synthesis between those two and the necessity I think we have in tribal communities and tribal nations to be able to find the ways to weave those. Now within that there's a number of challenges, and we know that there's a number of challenges about that. And so we're gonna be talking about how we alleviate those challenges and how we, what are some of those ways in which you've worked, obviously highlighting, you know, the obstacles, but also highlighting the ways that you've carved paths around those obstacles. So I want to start out with you, each of you, a little bit individually, because I think that's, again, as we continue to build relationships, is what we've been doing this whole last couple of days in our wonderful bingos. How many folks played bingo? Yeah, we all got a chance to meet our bingo partners, and we've been at these events, and we're meeting and reconnecting because it's about this spirit. So individually, some of these questions I'd like to ask. So let me start, or with you, you had a little cover article in some of the work that you're doing, and you talked about you're a matriarch. Okay, that's great. But I think getting deeper into that concept for you around matriarchy. Why is matriarchy and this idea of matriarchal approach is important in terms of this work that's being done, especially around economic development and that synthesis, that weaving between philanthropy and economic development?
Thank you. And I still feel conflicted about being named a new matriarch. But I like the concept of matriarchy. It's not just flipping from patriarchy. It is what does it look like to have a more integrated model of working, and being able to say, you know what, having economic development allows us to have financial stability, have flexibility, have choice, have sovereignty and self-determination in what we want to choose to fund and support. And when we think about matriarchy, we think about how can these systems be designed, and they all have been designed, so we have the opportunity to redesign them. Everything has been made up, and we can make it up in new ways, but we can imagine those ways that create abundance for everyone. And I'm particularly reminded of yesterday's comments up here on the stage with Yuhaviatam and Yochadiche. And both of these tribes were able to break a cycle of support from the federal government and get to a financial stability. And then they said, it's not just for us, we're giving back, we're able to support and continue and perpetuate a cycle of abundance. And that's what I think of with matriarchy, is reimagining these capital systems so that we can have all sorts of beautiful things and not just be waiting for the next handout, the next per cap.
That reinterpreting, remembering, if you will, right? The remembering of abundance, because I think opposing systems don't think about abundance. It thinks about, extraction. It thinks about these limitations, right? Do you think that's some of the challenges that face in this shift to a more indigenized, matrilineal, matriarchal thinking? Is that one of the obstacles that you see?
Yes, absolutely. One of the key obstacles in that there's this game theory idea of like, I can only win if you lose. Whereas we know that that is not true. There's very clear science, there's very clear analysis that shows that when we all do well, we all do well. And I think that is really the opportunity, is to start seeding that early. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The best time to start giving to support economic development and that financial freedom is now.
Amazing. So it doesn't all have to be Monopoly. Sometimes it can be Dungeons and Dragons, where you all go on an adventure together. It's the Indigenerd. I said it at the beginning. Chris, I met you back when we were traveling internationally, and we were at a big, international expo that our Maori relatives brought and were hosting. So in terms of these challenges, you have a perspective of that, and the challenges that we're seeing here, are these local, and I don't mean just like local tribal community challenges, but are these global challenges? What is your perspective on some of those moments and the things that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think on a global challenge, there are the work we've done in Canada and New Zealand in supporting those communities. We see a lot of similarities. And Sherry's done a lot of the international stuff too in New Zealand and Canada, but it's always having those pillars of how we're similar, and not really saying, okay, well, we can identify these are all the differences between us, but these are the paths of how we are similar. And especially in New Zealand, the work we do with their trusts and building their enterprises, they're very similar to our tribal community, and how they can set up these enterprises, and how they can build companies that are doing business nationally or internationally. And a lot of the work that we see and that we want to continue to do is, how do we build those connections? One of the things that the National Center does every year, we put on this conference called the Reservation Economic Summit, called RES. And this past year, we had over 500 attendees from Canada who wanted to do business with our tribal community, with our native business owners. So we made a platform for folks that can connect and do businesses together. We took a delegation to New Zealand. We had 10 businesses and a few tribes from the United States, where we connected folks with the trusts in New Zealand and businesses in New Zealand. The goal is, we can be stronger together. We can do business together. Maybe there's a project in Dubai that two companies can put together and bid on that project. And that's our vision at the National Center, to build these coalitions. Yeah, we can identify the differences. We can definitely focus on the similarities, but how do we do larger projects together on an international basis?
That's great. Thank you for that perspective, because I think it's important to remember that Indigenous communities we are interwoven, we're interconnected in these spaces, and part of that imagination, both in philanthropy and economic development, and interweaving them, I think takes so many of us working together to reconnect, as you know, my relatives would say, the song lines that we shared for so many years that were disrupted, you know, in this past 400 years or so, right? So, Sherry, when I sat back and looked at your experience and your resume, I'm like, what have I been doing with my time? I was like, man, I got to step up my game. And that's not to say that I haven't done a lot, but you have such a broad perspective on all of this incredible work in tourism and covering, I mean, your whole thing is the whole country, right? Like, it's a whole set in that space. In that perspective, what have you seen, or can you point to a moment of these shifts that you've been seeing over the last, you know, I mean, we could start with your career, but we don't have the full time for that. But where would you see, is there a tipping point as folks are starting to gain more awareness and understanding about the ways in which we are telling our stories instead of the way in which our stories have been told about us?
Yes, definitely a shift. We saw, you know, a lot during COVID. We weren't allowed to be around other people. We were quarantined at home. And for a lot of us, that was stifling. We had to get out into nature. So a lot of people went out and explored their backyards, essentially. And a lot of them ended up trying to come to Indian country. And what we saw there was Indian country was closing off borders and trying to protect themselves, protect their people, their elders. But one of the things that came out of COVID was the fact that people are now wanting to connect on a deeper level with other people, with destinations that they choose to go to. And so what better way to explore and experience America than with the first Americans here in this country? And so that's what we're seeing, is they want to come and see us. There is a high demand for Indigenous tourism and experiencing our destinations and our people. They want to know more. They see that we have this deep connection with our places. They see that culture and language is important to us. They see that we have Indigenous knowledge of the land and the way that we interact with nature, with the biodiversity around us. And so we're definitely seeing that high demand, especially from international visitors. You know, I see the statistics about really the impact of, you know, what's going on politically and some of the policies and executive orders that feel like they're attacking international visitors that want to come here to the United States. But we're still seeing these international travelers coming to our communities. I was just in Northern California last week for spring break, and I went to Alcatraz. I went to Wapepa's Kitchen in Oakland. I went to the Yocha Dihi olive tasting room, and I heard international languages everywhere I went. And so that's just, you know, my experience, but I do know that international travelers want to come to our American Indian communities. We get data from the National Travel and Tourism Office out of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and what that data shows us is when international travelers come here to the United States, top 5 things they want to do are visit national parks and our American Indian communities. So what an opportunity that is to have travelers wanting to come and experience us and our culture.
So there was this, I mean, we called it the Great Migration or the Great Reset. Was, you know, even as we were very much struggling as tribal communities in that space, it seems to me that it's like this replanting, right? It's that moment of fire. It's that moment where out of that came these seeds, these beautiful moments where we were able to reflect, but also it sounds like reset the narrative. Because and if I'm getting this right, that it was a chance for us to be able to sort of retell and reframe the ways in which we were engaging with tourism, with travelers, and also with sort of the funding sources and the folks that were wanting to support this kind of work.
Right, because we definitely have allies out there. We have people that want to support, and I know there's a lot of people in this room that want to support as well. And as far as travelers wanting to come, we need to be ready for that. And Chris does a lot of technical assistance and training, as does our organization. But one of the things that I'm really excited about is our accreditation program. We're partnering with Indigenous Tourism Association of Canada and New Zealand Maori Tourism. We've created a global organization, Destination Original Indigenous Tourism, and that is to unify our voices globally as Indigenous people around Indigenous tourism. And one of the things at that level, that global level, is to have every country adopt the accreditation program, the original, which was developed in Canada, tested there, and now we're adapting it and bringing it here to the United States to accredit our Indigenous-owned businesses, which there are about over 130,000 in this country, get them accredited, get them that global branding so they can be identified globally that they are an Indigenous-owned business with authentic experiences. And that's really exciting. And we're looking to launch a pilot later this year, and we're looking for supporters of this work because our scale here is much larger in the United States than it is in Canada. So we need everybody to come together to support this effort and to support our businesses across this country.
Brilliant. Did you all plan that? I didn't mean to send you like this global, all three. I mean, over here, I feel like you and I are hanging out on this side. We just let them do their thing about global stuff. You and I just hang out. We'll be like, hey, so, how are things going with you and capital and stuff? I'm good with that too. That was, I think, a brilliant synthesis of this whole, the necessity for connecting up all of our communities in all of these multiple spaces to be able to continue to develop those relationships, rebuild those song lines. So thank you for that. I want to sort of shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk, let's get a little bit into some of the economics of this thing. The economics, I know, there's philanthropy and economics, but we're here to weave them together. So talking about the economics a little bit in this, there's this concept that we call the missing middle, right, that we've discussed about. And I was sort of taught or explained this by one of our former governors, Rich Luarkey, at the Pueblo of Laguna. And he talked about, in high-functioning economies and spaces, it's a bell curve, right? So you have micro economies, you have sort of the smaller dollars folks that are, the little things around neighborhoods, et cetera, your lemonade stand, right? And then you have sort of the macro at the other end, which is the big industry, it's the Walmarts or whatever, right? But it's that middle section that holds an economy. It's that middle section that pulls everything together because you need that to be very robust. And this was probably about 15 years ago that we had this conversation. He said, the problem that we're facing and one of the challenges that we're seeing is that we have an inverted economy within tribal communities, is that we have a lot of incredible micro, which is our artisans, our folks that are making tamales and taking them around and these things. And then we have our big macro economies, the industry side of this, the casino side of this, but it's that middle section, that missing middle that we're really struggling with. So how do you, this is a toss-out question, we'll kind of let everybody jump in and see where the conversation goes, but how do you feel that not only within the economic development, but where is the importance of philanthropic efforts in helping to identify to find that missing middle in order to create robust economies for tribal communities and for our own home spaces?
Well, I can start because I think that's just a great question, and I'm going to piggyback on what Sherry said about the 130,000 plus native small businesses. There's those businesses in that bell curve actually are the ones that are helping create wealth in our communities. So those businesses, even if they create only 3 jobs, that's in a lot of our communities, that's 3 jobs that just don't even exist. For example, when I used to work at the Sequoia Fund, which is a native CDFI and enterprise of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, when I left that fund in 2008, we had created about 20% of new jobs on the reservation. And that's a big deal in rural North Carolina. So having, the infrastructure to support those businesses as they grow, that's a big piece where philanthropy could exist. Continuing to support organizations, because we help, Sherry and I and all of us, we help build those businesses. We help provide the tools for those businesses to succeed. We help provide opportunities for those businesses to succeed. And without that, some of those businesses wouldn't exist. And finance, bringing the finance for those businesses. And I think that's a key to a lot of times when you look at the philanthropy targets. I don't know if it's oftentimes saw that business development should be a number one, prong of their offerings, because it's a little complicated. How do you do it? So I think right there could be supporting more organizations that are building these businesses, helping encourage and accessing capital.
I'd like to give an example if I could. So in the tourism industry, I think there's a lot of misconception that we're well funded because you see this huge infrastructure of tourism across the country. That could be farther from the truth for our Indigenous owned businesses in the tourism industry. So the example is the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, which is in my state, in Nevada, is, 45 minutes northeast of Reno, Nevada. They have world-class Lahontan cutthroat trout fishing there. I mean, these trout can be 35 pounds. They're huge. And so they get visitation from around the world to come out there and fish. So people will fly into Reno, Nevada, and they will stay in Reno because there's no lodging out at Pyramid Lake. Mm-hmm. They rent a car in Reno. They fuel up that car in Reno. They dine in the restaurants in Reno. They'll drive out to Pyramid Lake, purchase a permit, $20, maybe for the day. They have a beautiful cultural center museum out there, which is donation. So you might spend another $20. Then you drive back to Reno. You dine in one of the casino resorts there that aren't Indigenous owned, and you go shopping in Reno. Who benefits the most from that visitation to extract Lahontan cutthroat trout from the tribe? It's not the tribe. It is the city of Reno. And because our nations are sovereign and any taxes they levy, their government decides, the tribal council decides, or they decide where that money is going to go to. Other businesses in the area, when somebody stays in a hotel, lodging tax, a portion of that goes back to the local Convention and Visitors Bureau or the state tourism offices. So that machine is funded by these room tax funds. But where does that leave Pyramid Lake? When they're not contributing room tax funds into the Reno
Right,
Sparks
right.
Convention and Visitors Authority. So they get no marketing. They get no marketing attention for their beautiful destination. And so that requires system change. We need to change that. And we can't do it alone.
Yeah, that's that part right there. You want to jump on in?
Yeah, so everything that we do at Mission Driven Finance is around this missing middle. We design, develop, and manage private investment strategies that are to create an inclusive, robust economy. And we know that it's not just Indian country that has this missing middle. It's actually global. And so we shouldn't feel bad like our economy looks like this. It's actually an artifact of the whole financial system. There is what's subsidized, and that's what supports small, and then there's where market actors are, and that's the mega organizations. But all of these things in the middle that do sustain, that could be creating hospitality, lodging, and other opportunities for Pyramid Lake, those are the businesses that have ripple effects, and they're harder to fund. They're harder to support, and that's true across the board.
Why do you think that is, given its importance in this economic space? And I'll add the asterisk to this, especially in Indian country, especially in indigenous communities. What are you seeing?
Well, I see a lot of things. One is for philanthropy, which is a great space to be able to take on the risk of trying something new, the cost of supporting something that's not paid for by traditional commercial market actions. That's a great space for philanthropy, but a lot of program officers are not comfortable even looking at financial statements.
Hesitation, if you will. Hesitation.
Hesitation.
Right?
There is some hesitation. And it's a new skill set to learn in addition to assessing what's the impact of this opportunity. Being able to say, like, what's the financial story? This is a whole new set for philanthropy to be able to understand. And I think that's one of the points of hesitation. I think there's also the opportunity for convening power, for education, the technical assistance that Chris talked about. Those are all things that do not get paid for by business and are a fantastic space for philanthropy to invest in that create the enabling conditions for thriving economies, for us to then have our own abundance that we choose how to invest, how to support with who we're hiring, who we're working with, who we're contracting with, that all of those choices come from having some of that early philanthropic backing that can provide the interstitial kind of connection.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. There's something that we were talking about, and I think this ties into it, because as you're talking, there's in my mind, there is a very deliberate function around relationships in this, and we've talked a lot about that's what we're all here for, but we talked about this idea of sort of this generational shifting that's happening, and we're seeing it in so many industries. How is that beginning to affect these relationships in philanthropy? I started out 20 years ago at Laguna Education Foundation. The folks I was working with have retired. They are not there anymore. So in that sort of a challenge, given the longevity that we often see within tribal communities, when we're working in these spaces, how do we tackle those generational shifts that are happening, both externally with funders and internally with our capacity in building, this economic development, these enterprises? How do you all see, or what are some of your imaginative thinking on that?
I don't know if it's totally imaginative thinking, but I get brought in a lot to train and help educate philanthropy on what does impact investing look like. How can we use our program-related investments, maybe think about our mission-related investments, the endowment corpus, and that is not funded. I pay to fly myself to Atlanta in 2 weeks. I pay to provide this support, and I'm like, well, this is weird. So I think there's an opportunity, again, to say, if a budget is a statement of values and you want to be supporting more education and more field development, write the check.
That's that capacity part. When we're talking about the capacity building, I think that's oftentimes we sort of think about it in these spaces as like, oh, so go learn things. This is such a concrete example of like, it's the chance to go to here. It's the chance to go and visit and focus and work with folks. I think that's a really solid, mark that down. I've said some great stuff.
I think too, a lot of organizations, including myself, we need to always be thinking about succession planning, because what often happens, especially small nonprofits, you have an executive director who may stay in that job for multiple years. It's really their identity as that organization often becomes the executive director's identity, and then when that person does move on, there's that identity sort of goes with them, and there's sometimes a little bit of, especially the smaller nonprofits, and oftentimes without that succession planning, without that, really supporting that next generation, I think there often is a little bit of a gap. You have a nonprofit that's done really well, then they sort of disappear, and then they're back up with the new leadership, and figuring out that succession planning and making sure that folks, that the executives are thinking that in the back of their mind, that says, hey, how do I build, my next generation, as well as board of directors need to be thinking about that as well.
Jump in is, that doesn't also have to wait until
It should be day one.
It should be day one.
Start at day one.
And particularly as a lot of leaders also face burnout and they have so much on their plate, upskilling the rest of your team, keeping them really excited and engaged about new projects, new opportunities, is one of the best ways to create a sustainable structure.
And new connections.
And new
A
connections.
lot of times you want to make sure as an executive that you let your team, and I know Sherry does this, and I do this, and Lauren, you probably do this. We make our team have those connections. I encourage my team to be on boards of directors. I encourage my team to develop projects on their own. I think that's a huge thing about building that, that next person to replace me.
Yeah, I agree that that's really important to have succession planning, both at the staff level and the board level. But I think what we also need is that support, that general support to build those teams, to have those teams that can build those partnerships, across our industry, across our tribes, to be able to do the outreach and all of those things. We really need that support. I talked about the funding for tourism. Well, we don't receive tourism funds for our efforts at the American Indigenous Tourism Association. So it would be lovely to have, a team that can go out and build these partnerships and relationships, but we have to have that support in order to do that.
Yeah. And I don't want it to be like piling on to philanthropy of like, we have these requests and please fix everything that is wrong with the government with your balance sheet. That's unrealistic. But there's ways that you can use that philanthropic, really special money in a surgical way that helps to create that abundance. And I think one example that we have is, Chris, we've talked about this, our capital weaving, where we are working with Native CDFIs and putting together larger transactions to support things in that missing middle. A lot of the infrastructure that's needed for a vibrant, thriving economy. We've got several that are in value-added food processing. I've talked to a bunch of you about value-added food processing. But putting together these things that support one business, but also create the rest of this work for other businesses around. I was able to start our Indigenous Futures Fund and collaborate with Native CDFIs and putting together $5, $7, $9 million transactions with a relatively small amount of philanthropy. And then that is able to keep itself going. we're able to have the revenue from it. So I'm like, I'm not asking for money forever. I'm asking for specific amounts of money that allow us to get over these hurdles so that, again, Pyramid Lake Paiute is able to thrive, is able to build that economic base and that financial opportunity.
I love that model, the mission-driven finance model, because it shows innovation, and you have a lot of like partners to make one project to support. We've talked about the mill, the flour mill, and it's just amazing how that project has taken a long time to, it's taken to 2024, 25 to really get a project like that done. So I just wanted to commend that.
Thank you. And Chris is talking about, we put together a $9 million transaction for Cairn Spring Mills, a wheat mill for mostly regenerative wheat, not entirely, on the Umatilla Indian Reservation in Pendleton, Oregon. And the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation were also heartened by so many Native CDFIs coming together to play this role of putting $9 million into a more than $60 million project, and said, we're gonna put equity into that company. We're not just gonna have this as a tenant, we're gonna have that tenant, as they grow, we grow. We get to have economic benefit from having this infrastructure in Pendleton and also have a stake in the upside.
So one thing that occurs to me is, we're talking about all this incredible work and all of this incredible capacity, and as you're bringing this up, and yet, here it comes, it's the big and yet, Native communities are still not funded through philanthropic investment at any level that is anywhere equitable based on the population. Now, this has been, even from the work of Natives in Philanthropy and so many incredible organizations that are here, and I'm looking out at all y'all, for all this great work that you're doing, it's still, the stats are the stats. The numbers are still the numbers. We know what this holds. So when we think about this, that there is a particular challenge that I think that arises, and it really has to do with that sort of mindset shift, right? So given these amazing successes, what are the ways in which we have to continue to pursue these mindset shifts around investing in Indian country, around investing in indigenous communities, in order not to be just the perpetual handout, it's just like may I have some more gruels, because that's not who we are. We're not looking at, we're not Oliver Twist. We are sovereign independent nations that are working through a system that has not allowed us to expand in natural ways. So how do we begin to overcome those particular mindset obstacles? Panelists.
I think that in working with Indigenous, from our perspective, cultural tourism, in working with our businesses, I think there needs to be an understanding that it is going to be different. Our journey is different, and it's not going to be, like others. And I think coming to the table with an open mind and understanding that this journey together as partners might look a little different than you're used to, but that doesn't make it any less. Because I think that the investment that you make with us and our communities is there's a significant impact in that. I think even more so in our communities because we are underfunded, because we do have this enormous need in Indian country.
And I also think too, especially over the past year and a half, we've seen a lot of the federal government pulling back on programs. The National Center, we've lost a total of almost $10 million of funds that were obligated to us for the next 5 years. And all that, it's not even like we even got terminated those funds, they just disappeared. I mean, there's no, no letter, no nothing. It's just like, all right, yeah, we don't have that office anymore. So there's a gap all over the country where nonprofits have lost federal funding. Now, organizations like myself and us on stage, we're able to diversify and look at that. But as we think about what philanthropy looks like, when we're looking at trying to build up the organization and new opportunities, one of the things that I would like to see more is having some matching funds from philanthropy. Like if there's a way to say, okay, if you can provide this amount, we can match. Another thing that we would like to see at the National Center and build up is more endowment. If we had an endowment to help keep our organization going. And I know many of the larger nonprofits in Indian country has that, and it helps build. They're not asking for money every year. It helps continue to build because of the endowment. So those are some big things I think would help.
Great.
And Sherry talked about, expect that this is going to look a little bit different. Investing in Indian country is going to look a little bit different, especially if you have not come to NAPCon. You have not done a lot of the homework of realizing, oh, this is the cultural context, and also there are so many different flavors of work in Indigenous spaces. I would say that there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear around what is the future going to hold? And I cannot tell you exactly what the future is going to be. I can tell you what we plan for it, what we dream for it, and you have to trust whether you believe in us or not. And that really is what it boils down to. I love a logic model more than the next girl. I love a logic model. But I work with a lot of philanthropy that wants to know exactly the outcomes to the T for 8 years, and I cannot predict that. The Skoll Foundation is an exception to that. They've been fantastic. They provided the initial $2 million that seeded the Indigenous Futures Fund, and they did rigorous due diligence on this investment. I will tell you that right now. It was rigorous, but they also got it done in less than a month. Wow. That was in 2022, and no other investors have come into the fund since because they don't know what it is. How can you tell me exactly where are these going to happen? Where are these investments going to take place? What industries are they going to be in? How many jobs is it going to create? And you have to just say, I believe in this as a vision. I believe in this team and the relationships that you have and why that's valuable for building multiple layers of capacity for Indian country, or you don't. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces of those, how does philanthropy move beyond hesitation, is to say, I'm not gonna know everything, and that's okay, because what's the worst that could happen? The project doesn't meet everything that it was designed for, but still something good came out of it and we learned.
That's great, and that is a great segue. I want to take one question from our app that I have on here that I really think that ties in really well with this, so I'm gonna throw this one out there too. What performance indicators could philanthropy use to measure not just how many people are served, but the tangible economic mobility or wealth generation created for tribal communities? I really like this, and I think I was like, I was looking at those questions. That ties in really well. So
I did not write that question.
No, did you not write that question? It was voted really well. That was awesome. So, yeah. So again, what performance indicators could philanthropy use that are tangible, that highlight this idea of economic mobility and wealth generation? What are some things that you can throw out there for us in your current experiences?
So, I think when you think of a performance indicator, thinking, I think a lot of times we look at, like you said, job creation, but I also think there is a lot of times what industry was developed that wasn't there to begin with. So if especially in our communities, when, just as Sherry described the Reno example, which is an amazing example of that leakage out of our community. So how what performance indicator that I would look at is on a geographically scale around the service area or the reservation boundaries, what new industry was created there? What new type of business? If it's a tourism business, how many of those or what is that? Because that creation then has all these other triggers. So maybe that one tourism business around the fishing, maybe they're doing other tours, and all of a sudden they create 3 jobs. So I mean, it would be a trickle-down effect based around the starting point is what's really the new industry. And I think that could be just one off the top of my head.
And that kind of made me think of how do we capture kind of the intangible as well? Because for cultural tourism, great, economic impact, jobs, but what about the perpetuation of our culture? What about our languages? So as we're, doing a tour, our younger generation is with us. They're learning the language. They're learning the stories. How do we capture that? Because to me, that is most important, that we're perpetuating our culture, that we're preserving our cultural identity as Indigenous people.
Yeah. Well, and seeing that cross, again, way back to the beginning of this, that separation of, well, here's economics, and here's philanthropy, and here's culture. And so I think there is a challenge for all of us in this space of how do we weave those together, and using that imagination to think creatively about the ways that we can create unique indigenized indicators that can assess not only the economic impact, but the cultural impact simultaneously in these particular, as we're looking towards this economic, philanthropic collaboration. You want to add?
Well, this is like a tee up for the Roan Horse Consulting session right after this.
Check it out.
Lots of things for Indigenous impact measurement and management. I absolutely appreciate both the points of Sherry and Chris. And I think I often think about what are those intangible outcomes of having a healthy economy. I want a healthy economy because I want a healthy economy, but I also want a healthy economy because then that's a healthy people. And I am the only person in my family that didn't go into healthcare. And I always come back to, what are those indicators? We have some of the worst Native health outcomes. It should not be the case that we have such mortality. And a lot of that comes from economic access. And so while we will hear from Vule later today, I started my career in nonprofits and philanthropy, so I cut my teeth on a lot of Vu's writing. But he wrote a long, long time ago about being careful about our indicators so that we're not trying to over attribute what our money is doing. There's going to be a whole lot of things that come together. I think he'll probably correct me about this later, but there was something of like, with this grant, we have brought back the return of the self-exiled unicorns. And just like these ridiculous extensions of like, well, with this one grant, we have created a whole new industry and also saved everybody's life. That's not going to be the case, but we will want to monitor those things to say, how are all of these interventions coming together to create a healthy, thriving economy and community? What are those things that tell us that this is collectively going in the right direction? For me, it's health at the longest term. For what we are sharing, it's also, what does that native capacity building look like? We are putting together and being the lead lender and structuring these weirdo finance transactions, but we don't always want to be in the driver's seat. What does it look like to go from having a weekly deal call where we're going through what the risk points are and how we're structuring it, to then being in the passenger seat and Angie Main and the NACDC team are taking the driver's seat? That's one of the indicators that we see.
I think there's also a piece to that around when we're talking about capacity building, and something that philanthropy may be able to support is the development of these kinds of broad metrics, right? So we're not utilizing other systems that don't necessarily capture this healthy community data. Well, a lot of people, how many are here and how many are sick and how many are in the hospital? And it's like, but that is not addressing cultural health. That's not addressing generational wealth. It's looking at, the kids, it's no sugar, or everybody's exercising. And I know that's very, very simplified. I know there are much more, deeper and much more complex mechanisms, but I think there is something that is necessary about defining these spaces for ourselves in many ways, right? So I think there's a key capacity for that. Chris?
Yeah, and it's interesting. A lot of the programs the National Center has, we get funding just to support that program. So maybe it's agriculture, or maybe it's a small business program, or maybe it's, and that's really awesome, and I'm very appreciative of. But oftentimes, when I'm looking and talking to funders, I have to come up with a program, before they'll even talk to me. And they're like, well, so oftentimes philanthropy needs to trust the organization just to say, you know what, we see you, we know you, we can see your balance sheet, we can see all the work you're doing. We just want to support you as an organization. And it is a trust factor, and I know that's really hard. I just recently had a corporate foundation. They're like, listen, we don't want any credit. We don't want anything. We don't want you to develop a program, but what we want is for you to be able to support all of what you do. And that was so valuable to us as an organization because it gave us the flexibility. The philanthropy partner, they trusted us. They could see, we're a platinum, nonprofit, so they had that trust already. So, but that's, for the philanthropy group, they have to trust, and they have to take that risk to say, you know what, we think you can just go with this, and we don't want any credit for it. And I think that's important.
That new program development, we like to refer to as philanthropy wanting innovative but proven. Yeah. I want the new thing, but show me how it works.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and the amount of programs I've developed in my career have all been great, but some of them have only lasted a couple of years because of that approach. Because you do get excited, and put all these resources in, and we're doing all this great work around the United States, and we're building jobs and we're building industries, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, that was a 3-year program, so now you're on your own.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with Indian country as well, is that this is not just a one-time thing. This is long-term. Right? A lot of the things that we're working on, a lot of the projects that we have identified, programs, these are long-term programs. And that's, for various different reasons within our communities. But yeah, we need partners that are with us for the long haul.
And I think that's part of that trust and relationship building, right? That has to be the fundamental of it. And it's the two ways, because that's what you're saying. It's the trust from these organizations that can help support economic development in this building for the long term, because the counterpoint is, we need to know you're going to be there for the long term. This is a partnership. So there's a cyclical nature very much, that is inherent into most of our philosophies about this regifting, this generosity, this regenerative, it's regenerative economic development. It is trust, it is relationship, it is building these fundamentals to see these long-term, sustainable, beautiful, amazing changes and developments within our communities across the board. I think that that's something that we really need to continue to investigate and develop and have those conversations with each other about. And we can hang out, so we're just right here. This is good. We're just gonna hang out. We're all good today. I'll find you out there. Don't worry, I can't see nobody out there, but that's fine. Let me ask another question. I know we have several that are sort of online. We've got about 10 minutes left or so. I'm gonna pull some of those, but if we don't get to your questions through the app, you can also come meet these wonderful panelists and myself in the hallway. We'll take selfies. We'll just have a great time with you. It'll be awesome. We got the little banner out front. So I think this is a really good question because we're talking about the challenges. We've talked a lot about some successes. This is my bread and butter. Where do you feel, or how would you describe the importance of imagination in addressing these issues or reinforcing what's happening? Sherry, I know you made this big transformation, and that has to be something that was like, we need to kind of think about this. There's the logic, but to be able to think beyond what has been done in these spaces requires that kind of imagination. And that's what we do with the Indigenous Imagination Workshop, is focusing on how do we keep bumping that imagination for our folks, for this next generation, the generational thinking. So in your minds, it's not what the role is, but how do we spark that imagination around economic development and this interweaving with philanthropy and economic, cultural, community development?
I think for us, imagination is sparked when we have good partners. I mean, we have been able, I talked a little bit about New Zealand and Canada. And to think about the future of Indigenous tourism and what we've come up with as a group and created this global organization, like who would have ever thought? This little nonprofit in the United States to partner up with Canada and New Zealand and hopefully the 90 other countries that have Indigenous peoples around the world will create this global brand. It's imagination like that can change an entire industry. And because of that partnership, we are seeing our other partners coming forward and being like, okay, yeah, you're serious about this, aren't you? And so now they're listening to us. Now they're including us, at the national level as far as tourism is concerned. And so I think, having other voices come in and getting that energy going together really sparks that imagination and creates something that you didn't even think was possible.
Mm-hmm. That creative tension that exists in that space, that's great, yeah.
For me, I don't like the words, "this is how we've always done it." I think imagination is really doing more than exist and really getting beyond that. We've always done it this way, or we've done it this way for 10 years. You have to really get out of that mind frame of this is how we've always done it. So I think that's expanding on imagination. I also think it's okay to celebrate. It's okay to celebrate each other. There's still, in the nonprofit industry, even in the Native nonprofit industry, there's a little competition between nonprofits. I think we should always build each other up. We should always look for partnerships. And there's not always, we shouldn't have to feel like we're competing against one another. I mean, there should always be, we need to work together and do our best. Now, I know I live in the real world, so that's not always a possibility, but there should be enough opportunity for all of us to build upon each other's strength. And I think that's something that we should continue to build upon, and that is imagination. And lastly, we really need to find those projects out there and highlight them and celebrate them as like, this is how they did it. And this is how we can learn on how they did it. This community actually did this right. So these are the factors that made this project work, and this is how they used all of their industry holistically to build this really robust industry. I need to celebrate that example, and and that tribe or that community needs to tell that story and say, this is how we do it, and this is how. And lastly, we need more support to help build those type of stories as well. So we can spread the knowledge, we can share with each other and build those collaborations.
That's one of my favorite songs, This Is How We Do It.
This is how we do it. You didn't know it was going to be a dance party this morning either, did you?
I love that so much. I went to karaoke on Tuesday night, so there's also some enthusiasm out there. But Chris, those points about, I also hate this sentence, this is how it's always been done. No, it isn't. It is not. I think about the year 1848 a surprising amount. Why? As the signing of the Treaty of the Guadalupe Hidalgo is also the year of the Great Mahele in Hawaii, where that privatized land use, land ownership. We didn't have a concept of private land as something you just did. So these ideas of this is what collateral and credit and character, all the 5 C's of credit, that this is how it's always been done. No, it's not. It's only existed in this way for a few decades. FICO scores got invented in my lifetime, and so being able to say that personal credit scores and a minimum personal credit score is how we must underwrite and decide what risk looks like, no, it's not. It was not like that before the 80s. So let's think about a different way.
Yep.
So how we relate it back to generational thinking, part is that I do think about the year 1848, but is thinking about what existed before to inform what can exist in the future. Lee heard me earlier when we were talking about the voyaging canoes, and that Uncle Herb Kane described them as, this is the spaceship of your ancestors. These took us thousands of miles across the deep ocean, and they were self-contained units. And we had this idea, like project planning, navigation, noticing, key performance indicators. All of these things existed, and then we can bring them forward again in a new way.
Key performance, is it still floating? That is a key performance indicator.
Do we still have water?
Is there food in the back? Very important performance indicators. I think that is so necessary in terms of how we think about indigenizing this work, these partnerships, this reciprocity, this regenerative spaces that we occupy as Native practitioners in the work that we're doing through capital investment, through economic development, through tourism, and the interrelation. And I find it so incredible to have all of you up here, because it's such a beautiful weaving of all of these foundations for the ways in which we are continuing to thrive. You had me at Spaceship, right? And so, you know, as I say, you know, the Native folks, we are post-apocalyptic people, and we are still here. We're still around. We're still doing this because we have engaged and we've done this deep relational work, this kind of thinking, and the invitation for others to come into that space to learn from how we have succeeded in these, you know, in these new generations, these new decades, in these upcoming spaces. So if you have one thing, we've got a few minutes left. If you have one you can only pick one, value that you would share about all of this in your core values and the work that you do. This is part of our succession planning, right? So what is one value that you would share to that next generation of philanthropists? What's one value that you want them to come in with? What's one thing that you want to pass down in that spaceship of our ancestors? What's one value you got? We'll just go down the line. We'll start here.
So I get to go first.
We'll let you go.
One of my core values is curiosity, which is coupled together with humility. You've got to be humble to be curious. If you think you know everything already, you're done. So having that curiosity and that challenge, right, of this is not always the way that it has been done. How can we imagine a new way? How can I be curious about that? That's what I would give to the next generation.
Amazing. Take it in the spaceship. Chris?
I'd say we need to build each other up. Strengthen, we can get strength from one another. We can rise together. We can, the idea that we are navigating this world on our own, and that we're always in our own lane and we can't support each other is just not the idea that I believe in. So I believe in our other organizations. I believe in supporting whoever I can to help them get to the next level, and that's my value.
Love it. Send that out. Sherry.
Culture.
Yeah.
Again, I think culture is at the highest level for Indigenous people. And I think, as philanthropists, to learn more about the culture, to build some understanding of the people that you're potentially working with. And it's on us too, as Indigenous people, to answer those questions, to provide that information, to invite you in to learn more. And so that's what I would say. Amazing.
So with that, folks, we'll put out our fire right here. All right, we fire safety. So we want to make sure that that's taken care of on that. Please give a big round of applause to our incredible panelists for sharing your wisdom and knowledge. A huge thank you from me to Natives in Philanthropy to just be up here and just sit with these most amazing people, and always to be able to hang out with all y'all in these spaces. You can find everybody by their incredible work, their bios. Check the Whova app. There is also a full day of programming coming up, so please don't forget to attend all those incredible extra panels we know that are going to be down the line to continue that knowledge sharing. From myself, and as we say at the Pueblo of Laguna, Tawae, thank you for allowing me to be here and sharing this time with all of you. And all of you, and a big round of applause to everybody once again, and we will leave the stage.